Welcome to your Sprinkle with Hope podcast and your host Jason. And today we bring to you an amazing guest. Seriously, I just hope you're like strapped in for this one because there was so much to unlock, and Shane and I could have gone on for a long time unpacking a lot of the things that she talked about. And so I'm sure we'll have her on again, but she tells an amazing story and it's really hers to share. So I'll leave her to talk about that. But just really listen to what she says, and if you haven't read her book, read her book, Step, Step, Jump. I'm sure you'll be enlightened and love it.
She gives so many amazing little insights. The one that really stuck to us was talking about a puzzle and being a piece of the puzzle. And I hope you listen to all of it and really focus in and listen. We talk about that as well. Such an amazing guest, and we're so grateful that she's part of our family now. Please listen in, share it. Just thank you so much for all the support that you give us, and we couldn't do it without you.
Welcome to the Sprinkled with Hope podcast. This is Jason.
And this is Shane.
And it's podcast time.
Welcome back to your Sprinkle with Hope podcast and your host, Jason. Today, Shane and I have an awesome guest that we're bringing to you, Annabel Quintero, and we're going to talk to her about some really cool stuff and just overcoming some of the challenges that we all face in life. But just to give it an introduction to who she is, Annabel Quintero is a lover of life, a best-selling author of a unique story with improbable twists and turns, and an inspiration to people pursuing excellence amidst adversity, economic uncertainty, and relentless change, which is what we're all dealing with right now. And so we'll talk more about your book, which is called Step, Step, Jump. But we'll get a little bit more into that as we move through this interview today, which also that book helps you transform trauma into triumph, which a lot of us deal with those kinds of things in our life, right? Different kinds of trauma. There's little t and big T trauma. But the interesting part of her whole story that I'm interested to ask her about is, her narrowly escaping the 46th floor of the One World Trade Center during the 9/11 attacks. So can you kind of walk us through that story and just share a little bit of insight, and then we'll ask you some questions based on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Shane, for having me on. I'm born and raised in Seattle. I wanted to pursue my dreams, and I moved to New York City. So it was a couple of years. I landed this great job at a boutique hedge fund. And so it was my job to get my boss, who was a portfolio manager, ready for this morning bell. And so I was doing that. I got to work. I was running a little late and was printing all the portfolios. And while everything was turned on, I finally sat down to read the paper. And all of a sudden, I just felt something fall on my tower. And I was like, what was that? I was like, so I ran to the window to look outside. I thought another building had like fallen over on us. And then I looked, but all the other buildings were shorter than mine. I was like, okay. And they were fine. And it was like a beautiful, sunny, clear day, clear fall day. I was like, but then all of a sudden, while I was near the window, then I started feeling an earthquake. And I had experienced an earthquake in California, but we're in New York. New York doesn't have earthquakes. So I grabbed my purse, ran to the office door, and it stopped. Thank goodness. And there I was met with another man. He came out of his office, and we just looked at each other, and I could see all the fright out of his eyes. And the earthquake began again. He ran back into the office, and the door just slammed. And mine was coming with all my force. I had to hold that door open. And then the building stopped, the earthquake stopped. And I just remember asking, like, ay Dios mío, ¿qué hago? Dear God, what do I do? And I was looking under the desk to see, okay, maybe I should take cover because it's an earthquake. You're supposed to go under the desk, but there were boxes. And then when I looked into the office again, all the sunshine had gone away. And it was just this muted gray, and everything was gray in the office. And that was my answer. I was like, okay, I can't be here. But then the fear set in, and I just was like freezing. And then in my mind, I started thinking, well, I really shouldn't leave because the bell, I don't want, I don't want my boss coming to the office and I'm not here. And,
Right.
all that talk to try to convince myself to stay. And then this voice was like, Annabelle, you have to try to leave the building, even if you die trying. And I faced my mortality in that moment just to be able to take that first step. And I did. And I was running in the hallway, and I was like this rag doll in a fun house. I mean, the walls, I couldn't reach the walls of the hallway. When I would run, my feet weren't catching the floor because of the way the floor was moving. And I finally got to the stairwell. The shaking stopped. And I was like, okay, I gotta open the door. But I was so in shock and so fearful. I could not tell if that doorknob was hot or cold. And I remember, don't open a door unless you know the doorknob's cold, because there might be a fire on the other side.
Right.
And I literally had to stop and breathe. So I was like, calm down, Annabelle. I was like, breathe in, breathe out. And I could finally listen to my brain synapses. I was like, hot, cold. Okay, it's cold. And so I opened the door. No one was there. I was still by myself. But I started choking because there was this corrosive stench that was singeing my nose and my throat. And then I had to put my sweater over my nose like this. And I was like, oh my goodness, there's a fire. And I was like, okay, something followed on the building. There's an earthquake, and now there's a fire. So I knew I had to get out of there. And so I put my hand on the railing, and I stepped with my left, and then I stepped with my right, and then I jumped on the landing, and I step, jumped, and step, jumped down 46 flights, and was met with hysterical people. I unfortunately saw this one lady who was burned. She was like naked, wrapped with sweaters around her. And, really seeing our beloved firefighters ascend their stairway to heaven, just really experiencing that one day of war just changed me in so many different ways. And I've just been on this quest to figure out why do we hurt ourselves that way, and really studying all the ways that mindsets and ideas divide us. Because that day, when I had finally, in the book, I take you on this journey, the cab ride, and there's so much that happened, but I realized that day, my spiritual awakening was, we were all one. I had never felt that connected to humans, to Mother Earth, to everything. And I was like, wow, I don't understand why we could do this to each other. And so I've just been I've done a lot of anti-racism work, and really just those limiting mindsets that are so old, that were there to divide and conquer, and how now we're just still so hurt from it all. And so that's where I like to focus on now, is how to not believe the lies anymore.
Yeah.
Right.
Annabelle, that is an amazing story. I appreciate that you shared that. There's so many things you said in there that I just love. And I think the first thing you said was, as this started to happen, your very first thought was, God, what do I do? And for Jason and I, faith for us is very important. And I think that's so amazing to hear somebody who's going through this thing, and their first thought is, I need help from a higher power. And And then you ended with talking about mindset, and Jason and I talk a lot about that. So what do you think has changed your mindset going through this? Like what specific things have you seen in your life that have changed your mindset for the positive?
Well, first, asking the higher power, like what God, universe, however people want to call it, right?
Right.
But listening.
Mm.
So I got my answer when the office turned gray. It was subtle, right? But it was clear. And I think many times, well, what I learned from that is sometimes we ask for help and we get the answer right away. And because it's so instant, then we don't want to listen to it and we don't want to follow it. And so if I didn't listen, if I didn't have that intuitive, okay, that's my answer. And I told you, I was like really afraid. I wanted to talk myself out of doing anything about that. And I didn't. And so my intuition, I value my intuition. And that's one thing I've learned. And I talk about it with people that our intuition is something that can grow, something that we need to harness. And we need to be more comfortable and trust that sense, that intuitive sense of that we were born with, that we can grow. So that was really powerful. And then the second part of your question, you said was mindset. Tell me again what the question was.
I was just curious from your standpoint, like how this experience has changed your mindset. You know, what things have you seen in a positive way going through this? Not necessarily the event, but your mindset now in things that you go through, you know, because we're all going to live life and we all struggle and you see those valleys and hills. But I'm just curious how you have changed your mindset for the better.
Yeah. A couple things is it took me I tried to write my book many times, right? So it was 20 years and I journaled my whole life. And sometimes, so the story that I had, the reason why I kept my silence for so long was I didn't want to tell anyone I was a September 11th survivor for just the fame, for just entertainment, for it really made me sick that and so my story in my mind was I am going to keep silent and so that's my way of showing reverence to all the people who died that day, to all the people that have died in all the wars throughout the 20 years, right? Like all the pain that we've seen in our world. And so that was kind of my story. And then it wasn't until, but I still wanted to share like all these different things that had happened to me. And really when, so one of the things that I realized is some of our stories, as we share them, we evolve our own healing. And I also realized that our life stories, we sometimes think we just need to compartmentalize. Oh, I got over it. But they're actually for everyone. And the more that we share our stories is giving other people permission to do the same. And as we share our experiences, our wisdom, our truth, it's almost like we're putting a piece of the puzzle, like this collective puzzle that we're all involved in, right? We're all co-creating this life experience. And the more that we share what's happened to us, the more we are putting that piece of the puzzle together for everyone. And so that's one thing that I've really realized. And it's taken years, a couple decades, right?
Beautiful thought.
Yeah, I love the passion in the story and just the things that you went through. And you know, I thank you for your character. It shows in just the way that you present yourself and you know, you holding on to that story for so long. And what an amazing tribute to those that unfortunately, you know, gave up their life for that day. But something also you kind of unpacked a little bit, and we could probably unpack it a lot, but it's this, you're choking, and oftentimes we're choking in life, right? Like we're stuck at, whether it's depression, anxiety, whatever it is, right? We're feeling like we're choking and we're not sure what to do. And you took that first step and then took another step and a jump, right? So let's talk about that just a little bit, because it is, the title of your book, Step, Step, Jump. But I think that's also true in life. Like, take a step, take another step, and then let's start to, you know, times that over and over again, right? By continually doing those things.
Yeah. That's a great question, because that's actually the foundation of a lot of my practice, my coaching. And so the first step is like the phase one is acknowledging that you have an issue, acknowledging trauma or acknowledging the challenge, right? You have a problem. Not being in denial is the first step of fixing, of growing anything. The second step is practicing self-awareness, practicing self-reflection. And for me, that was dancing, that was journaling, and meditating, right? Or being in silence, being with Mother Nature. So those two things are the first steps. And then it helps you understand your pattern, right? When you're in silence, or when you're observing yourself, you can actually observe, okay, this is a story that I have, or this is a memory, and this emotion is coming up. And then I'm feeling all these things in my body, like I'm feeling all these bodily sensations, but those three things make your human behavior. And for me, I had to do a lot of that because of the PTSD. I didn't even know there were three pillars to human behavior. I was like, what? There's like a thing to that, like, define why we do the things we do. And I was so triggered and wounded and so reactive. And so the meditation for me allowed me to learn how to observe myself and realize observing is an action. I don't need to pick up the phone. I don't need to send the email. Sometimes I just need to reflect on what's happening with me. And if I choose, I'm creating this space to choose how I want to respond. But it's a choice. And I'm not just like, oh, the memory came up, you hear that song, or, whatever it is. And then you just do that same old action, and then you're just right back in that cycle. So that's the power of self-reflection and it's a practice. You have to do it every day, I feel. And then the third thing is the jump. So the jump is the new action. If you want new results, I always tell people, everything in your life is an accumulation of everything you already know. So your answer is going to be in a new action, and your answer is going to be in your cultural blind spot. It's going to be in a place that you don't know. It's in the dark. It's in the shadow. Your answers are in what you don't know. So you have to seek what you don't know to get a new result, because you already know what you're getting now with what you know.
Right.
Yeah, that's
love that.
And so that's the jump, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's scary. You got to be courageously vulnerable to do it. It's not like it's easy. It's simple, but it's not easy.
Right. There are so many things you're saying that are just hitting me. So, like, this has been a great discussion. I wanted to point out, I loved also in your story when you said I had a lot of fear, and I realized I just had to take one step. And I think it goes back to what you were just saying, is the new action, right? You have to do something different if you want a new result. You can't keep doing the same thing over and over and then not being successful and thinking, well, why am I not successful? So you, in that moment, was taking that one step. That's all it took. And you could gain that momentum. I also love that you brought up your new action. I just love that. That really just hit me so well that so let's focus a little bit on your again, we're talking about your book, Step Step Jump. again, we love to give the opportunity for our listeners to, one, contact you, and if you have any books. So if you don't have the book, get it. But I'm curious why you wrote this, and then if you want to also mention how people can get a hold of you.
Sure. I always wanted to write it. It was just very difficult to do. And I've always journaled, but I wanted to make sure that it was going to serve people. It was going to serve everyone on their life journey. And one of the things why I wrote it was because I wanted to share that story of war, the story of feeling conquered, the story of facing our collective history as a country. And then also all the ways that I healed myself doing a 10-day meditation, which is ancient Eastern medicine, right? And also being in a Lakota sweat lodge and having that ancient Native American medicine heal my body. And so the PTSD, the healing process, yes, having therapists, but also knowing that there's so many ways that we have to heal ourselves. And the body, it's not just the brain, but the body needs to get healed as well. And so sharing all of these, like I said, I jumped into my cultural blind spot because at that time, I grew up Protestant Christian. I didn't meditate. I prayed, I was on my knees, but I never meditated, right? And then even though I'm Latina and I'm African, Native American, and European, growing up, we didn't really know our indigenous way of being. That wasn't something brought in my home, right? Besides the food, right?
Yeah, right.
And so for me, experiencing that, and it's like, yes, I need to heal, and I need that. So I'm going to do something completely new because I put my healing as a priority. So I wrote the book because I feel, especially I was writing it during COVID, and I wanted to make sure, I felt like, okay, we're all collectively being traumatized right now.
Right.
This is going to change a lot of people, and some people will be prepared for it mentally. Some people will not be prepared for it emotionally, financially. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And I wanted people to know that the only peace you will really have is within yourself. And so there will be things in your life that are life altering that you cannot control. And all you can really control is your response.
Yep.
That's it. Yep. And also your perspective, right? Your attitude. Yep. And that's it, because there's things in this world we can't control. And I think, I have two children, and they were tweens and teenagers. And I remember, they were having a hard time, and they were doing remote schooling. And I said to them, I said, you are so lucky. I know you can't see your friends, but if we were in war, you wouldn't be able to learn through a computer. And if we were facing war, like in people in other countries, the three of us would not be safe. We wouldn't even be safe in our home, and we would have to leave. I said, so I know we're afraid of this disease, and you can't see your friends, and we can't see anyone. It's like, but mommy can still work from home, which is a huge privilege, and you can still learn, and we're safe. And so I wrote the book to just like I shared with my daughters, what to be grateful for in just, despite the challenge. I wanted people to see all the different complexities of a day of war and to be grateful for peace.
That's great.
Love it. Seriously, this has been an awesome conversation, and we could probably go on for forever, honestly. And really something that kind of struck me was, as you were talking about pieces of the puzzle and us, all of our stories kind of molding together, it brings that sense of unity and community. And I just loved that kind of that idea and concept. So I just wanted to mention it. I love that visual that it gave me, as we grow together instead of tearing each other apart. we can be
Yeah, we're trying to
stronger,
put this
right?
puzzle together.
Right.
I'm always
Yeah,
so,
not tear
why
it
do
apart.
people make it so difficult? Life is hard enough. It's hard enough to find the piece just to put it there, right?
Right.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah,
true.
and
So
I loved that. So thanks for sharing that. So right near the end of the podcast recording, Shane and I do a thing called the double down dose, and we love doing this because we love asking these questions, but it's two very easy questions but somewhat difficult to answer. And so the first question is what is your definition of hope?
oh, hope. It's a vision that you don't forget, even when you're sobbing, even when you're crying, even when you're all alone. And it's knowing that this will not be this way forever, and a better day will come, and I will feel better at some point. I don't know when, but I know. So it's a knowing that things will change for the better.
It's beautiful. So these are really thought-provoking questions. And again, they're so easy, but they're so hard for some people to answer because we often don't think about, well, what is hope? So the second question of Double Down Dose is, how would you define love?
Oh, love. Oh my goodness. Happiness, reciprocity, justice, and trust and joy and pleasure, right? But yeah, love is love is so many things, but it's really a choice.
It's so true.
That's
So
awesome.
true.
Shane and I love asking these two questions because I think it gets at the core of who we are and what do we think about and moving forward. And Shane and I, we started this really in the COVID era, this podcast, and we wanted to bring people more hope in a world that just seems to be somewhat hopeless sometimes, and finding hopelessness, right? And so, yeah, we love asking these questions. And so thank you for answering those and being a part of our podcast. And
Absolutely.
we really appreciate you and your.
Yes, thank you. And if anyone would like to buy the book, they can buy it on Amazon.
Awesome.
They can go to stepstepjump.com if they themselves have a story that they've never shared before and are looking for a safe space to do that. But it's been an honor to be with you both. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you again so much for your courage to speak and so many great things you said. I've really appreciated this. So thank you again so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.